hang on. Okay, now it's on. So class, welcome to today, and we're going to be looking at the topic of language in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the next assignment that is due. It is the third speech that is due. And if you take a look at the syllabus, you will see that the third speech is actually due, but listen to, I'm going to give you a better situation, is actually due 1 week today, which means we do not meet as a class because you will be doing your third speech. Most of you have handed in your second speech. Some of you have not yet, and I do need your second speech handed in. That was due last week. Your third speech, which is actually due on Monday next week, here I'm going to give you an opportunity to choose one of two ways of doing this. You can hand it in next week. And what I will do, if you hand it in by Monday of next week, I will grade it and etc. I'll be sending you the same stuff that I'll be sending likely tomorrow or Wednesday about this speech, the second speech. But on the third speech, you can hand it in on Monday of next week. If you hand it in on Monday, I will grade it, but then I will give you a +2% for the final grade of that speech. However, I am going to give you an extra week if you need it, and it will not be late. So in other words, you can hand in the speech 2 weeks today, and it still will be on time, but you won't get that +2%. If you hand it in by next Monday, you get the +2%. It is the persuasive speech that you will be giving next. Okay, so I'm letting you know, those who are with me and will be watching this on as a recording, if you can get this in by the see, that would make it the 7th of April at the latest. It will be on time. If you get it in on March 29, it will be your grade +2%. So that I'm just giving you an incentive to get it in, but I'm also realizing you're under a lot of pressure. So I'm going to give an extra week to get that speech done. Okay, so it's up to you, but we'll work with what you can get. So the speech is due 1 week today. If it is on time, on the 1 week today, if it's in, then you get +2% on top of the grade that you actually get. Plus, but you can have one extra week and it will not be seen as late. So hopefully you understand what I just was trying to say to you. Okay. So I wanted to make sure you have opportunity to work on that speech and hand it in one of those 2 days. One day you get a bonus, the other day it's just normal. Now, I wanted to talk about one more thing I want to add to you that you need to be aware of. My time tomorrow, I'm going to send you a link to a speech that I would like you to watch. You don't have to do anything else, just watch it. It's about a 7 or 8 minute speech. And then on Wednesday of next week, whether you watch in class or whether you have to watch it via a recording, I'm going to talk about the speech. I'm simply going to evaluate the speech. You don't have to say anything. I'm going to walk through that evaluation form with you. I'm going to evaluate it. Okay, so and the reason I'm doing this is I want you to keep getting a good feel of what that evaluation form is like, because it has all the science on it that we've talked about. And you'll have a good sense of how I'm using it. It'll help you think through your speech coming and the evaluation from it. And it also helps you understand about some of my thinking about the final exam, which we'll be talking about later. And the final exam will be done during a final exam week on a time frame that works for you. And you will get an individual speech that many others won't get, because I have several speeches to use. And you're to evaluate the speech and write a 1,000 to 1,200 word critique of the speech. Okay. So what I'm doing more and more now, this is kind of the last real lecture that I'm going to give on language. Usually I do this one earlier, but I really want to get you comfortable with that evaluation form, which really is covering this theory that we've been talking about. Okay. So it's preparing you. So tomorrow, my time, sometime tomorrow, I'm going to send you a link to a speech. All you have to do is watch it. And as you're watching it, just think about the theory we've studied. Just think about it. And then I'm going to talk on Wednesday about the speech. I'm going to give you my evaluation of the speech and my reasons for why I give what I give. And that's really what the speech is what Wednesday is going to be about. It won't be a lecture with PowerPoints. It will be my walking through the evaluation form and talking specifically about the speech that I'm going to critique that you will have watched. It will only take you 7 or 8 minutes to watch it. So I'll be getting that to you my time sometime tomorrow. So I'll make sure you get that. Okay, so just be aware that that's coming. If something goes wrong and with you being able to see it, don't worry about it. Just come on board and listen to my critique. Anyways, now I want to talk about this last major topic, because really after, I'm just looking up here, this class session here, I'm just looking up in the class. If you look at the syllabus on page 7, which I have here in my sheet of hand, you will see that we're going to do like that speech I'm going to talk on Wednesday. And then I'm going to, next week we don't meet because you're getting your speech ready. And then I'm going to, on the 7th, it's due. I may shift a couple of things around. I'll let you know about that, but I'll be debriefing speeches, but I won't be debriefing them just like, for instance, Marianne just asked about how I see things. I'm going to go through just generically. I'm not going to speak to each of you individually because you have gotten your evaluations. And that. So I will be going through just generically what I'm saying. Now you have till the 7th, so if some of you don't have it in yet, I can still talk about generically what I'm seeing in the speeches. And then on the 12th, we have a speech. It's a TED Talk, so it's make sure you have the information. I want you to watch it. It's about a 23 minute speech that I'm going to ask you to watch. And you'll watch it before the 12th because we can't watch it together. And then I will have us talk about the speech. On the 14th of April, I'm going to do preparation for the final exam. And on the final exam, you will have to choose exam week, the Trinity Western exam week, what day you want to have the exam and what time. Now, many of you are from other lands, so I don't expect you to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing the exam. So you have to help me know what day you want to do it, your time, and what time, so that I can make sure I get the speech to you beforehand on time. So we have to work with you on that. Now, the 19th I have down for the final exam. Some of you may say, okay, I want to do it that day. You can. Otherwise, we're not going to have a class. We can just let, I got a lot of fixing up of things because this class here is a little more complicated with over half the class being in other lands and that sort of stuff. So I need some space to make sure I get everything straightened up that way. So we are coming to the end of the semester. I know as we're coming to the end of the semester, we all feel different levels of stress related to that. And I want to make sure that you are able to get things done. And that, so I'm going to be trying to, work with you on that. And I'm just checking here. I see, it looks like I actually have a couple more students back in class here. I'm just looking here at who's here. Oh, there we are. Okay, somebody else came in. Okay, I'm just marking a couple of other students that I know are here. Okay, good. There. So we're coming towards the end, and I'm just going to be sensitive to trying to help you finish this course and finish it well. So let me get started. This speech here, this talk here, is about language. Now, usually I do this earlier, and if you will remember, we back some time ago looked at the three components that are part of a message. There's the nonverbal communication, hand gestures, facial expressions, eye contact, those sort of factors. The other one we looked at was the issue of not just body language, but tone of voice in regard to how we come across, and all those dimensions related to that area specifically. Tone of voice would deal with pitch, rate, pauses, volume, enunciation, fluency, and vocal variety. Bodily aspects deal with the gesture, the eye contact, facial expressions, and the overall movement. But there's a third area, and I had mentioned to you before when I was talking about these three parts that make up 100% of the message, that it really makes up the percent-wise the smaller part, and that's the words, the language. That's about 10%, where nonverbal body language makes up about 50% of communication, and 40% are made up of our tone of voice. But I also told you that language was the most important, even though it had the smaller amount of percent. It's really the most important. The words are critical. The words are absolutely necessary. And words mean something. And we need to be aware of that. So let's take a look at this area. What is language? Well, language is the tool used to communicate meaning. We use words, we use the sounds that come out of our mouths, the vibrations go through the air, enter into the brain of another person, and they are able to decipher what you're saying, because those words are symbols that have meaning to them. So as I'm speaking right now, you have good enough English, you are understanding what I am saying, and we're using technology to enhance this, obviously. And so language is a tool that we use to communicate meaning as we are in conversation with others, as we're making a presentation. Our words have meaning to them, and they're significant. Language is a system of signs and symbols used by a speech community, whether it be family or work or church or business or a country or small group, wherever it is, to share meaning and experience. Language is about words. Words have significance. I was watching American Idol last night. It's a program where people can compete to be the singer of the year on the choice of the year. And they often start with hundreds and hundreds who compete, and eventually comes down to the top 10. And right now they have probably a couple hundred, and they're beginning to bring it down to 10. Last night they began to eliminate people who could sing well, but didn't have that level necessary. And what was really interesting is that they had this this gal that they were talking to, like they videotaped her, and she was talking about her confidence, that she lacked confidence. And she shared how when she grew up, her mother had told her, "I wish I had never given birth to you." And that impacted this girl, the power of those words. I wish I had never given birth to you. In other words, I don't want you. I don't want you alive. I don't want you around. And she experienced those words. I don't know how many times it was said. If it were said but one time, it has the power to negatively impact a person. It communicated meaning to her. The meaning was, you're not valued. You're not important. What a horrific thought to have that communicated to her. And language was used. And what's interesting is that words are powerful. And those words were hurtful and painful to this gal. She did not have confidence because of the comment her mother made to her, and likely other negative comments. See, language, words, they're tools used to communicate meaning. If a person says that you are pretty, or handsome, or smart, or intelligent, or ugly, or worthless, or pathetic, all of those words have meaning. It either builds up or it tears down a person. We use language to communicate meaning. And I was using language earlier, talking about the fact that your next speech is technically due next Monday, but I'm going to give you one additional week if you want it. However, if you hand it in next Monday, you get 2 additional percentage points. If you hand it in after Monday, you just get the normal potential points out of the speech score that you end up with. So out of, let's say the speech, let's say you got, oh, I'm trying to think of a percent here. Let's say you got, let me just look up a percent here. Let's say you got, let's say you got 75%. Let's say you got 75%. That's a B. But by adding exactly 2 more percentage points, that makes it 77. That makes it a B plus. Okay, so I was using my language to communicate. Hey, next week the assignment's due, but I'm giving you 1 more week. But if you get it in next Tuesday, next Monday, you get 2 percentage points added to this actual score. If you hand it in after, you get the score that would be out of the normal score. And next week's speech that you have to give, the one next week, is worth 25%. The one that some of you haven't handed in yet is worth 20%. So I'm looking for everybody to get that speech in. So we use words to communicate meaning. When you are giving a public speech, you're using language. You're speaking to your audience. Signs and symbols are used to communicate, whether it's to your family, in a work situation, in a church, in a small group, whether you're in government, wherever you are at, we use language all the time to share meaning and experience. And we do not just share meaning, we're not just stoic taking in language, it impacts us not just intellectually, but emotionally. For instance, yesterday, a couple, a husband and wife, friends of ours, came to our door. They didn't come in our house because of COVID-19, but they had this container, a bag actually, filled with different foods for us so that my wife wouldn't have to cook. So last night we had this incredible soup that was made. We're going to have it again tonight. And I've done a little bit of, I'm not a cook, but I can do a little bit. But they were there checking to see how Joanne was doing. We were standing outside, social distancing, and the meaning was, here's food for you to nourish you while you're not well, so you can't cook, you don't have to worry, just put the soup in a pot, heat it up, eat it. Really simple. It expressed, here's the meaning of this. It's to take care of you, but it also involved experience. You see, what those people were saying is, you are important to us. They weren't using those words, but their actions shared that. I mean, they shared, here's the food for you. And what were they meaning? We care about you. We know you're in a weakened condition. This will take care of you for a few days while you continue to heal. And Joanne is better than she was. I brought her home after the operation, and she wasn't too lively, and the next day a little bit better, and the next day better, and today better yet. Now we don't know what the outcome will be. Hopefully it's going to be a good outcome. We'll wait and see. On April 6th, the doctors will give us more information. So words are important. Language is important to be used. Now, I've gone over this with you before. I've talked about the issue of encoding and decoding. This is all about words, okay? Encoding is putting meaning to words or sounds, which are symbols that create meaning and images of meaning. So let me share this in a very simple way. When a child is born, they don't have a vocabulary. They share with us through different ways, like crying, sometimes smiling, but they use those sort of ways to communicate to us because they don't come into this world with a language. But as they grow up in the culture of their parents and their family, slowly they begin to put words, meaning to words. And eventually they begin to imitate those words. Whatever language is your language, slowly you begin to imitate those words. And slowly that word you begin to associate to a particular meaning in your mind. For instance, when you see in English, when you see your mother, you might say, a baby say mama or mummy or mama. And for dads, they might say dada or daddy. And slowly they form those words. And so over time, they begin to understand these words and they begin to use these words. And then over time, they add words to the brain. And that brain stores this word, which is a symbol, and it has meaning, and they use that word to convey something so that the meaning of the word gets into the listener's ears, and they begin to have a conversation with each other. And that's how we develop language, by being in a culture where it's used, by beginning to imitate, by beginning to associate it to a specific meaning, object, or a meaning of experience, and we begin to use it. And in the process of using it, people listen to what we're saying. But the encoding is the issue of listening to the sounds, creating a sound, which is a word, putting it in our brain, and beginning to understand the meaning of the meaning of the word. If I say the word black, it has meaning to you. It might mean it's a color, it's dark, it's a dark color. It could also be used as a name. It could also be used in regard to describing a difficult time. This was a black time in my life. Dark, meaning dark time in my life. But But the word black, when I give you the word black in your mind, you have a meaning to it. If I use the meaning car, it means likely to you a vehicle that you've driven in, that sort of idea. So the word is a symbol of an object or an experience or something of that nature, and we store it in our mind. So as you're listening to me, if you have really good English, you're understanding what I am saying, and your brain is going, there's a sentence. If I say to you, how are you doing? Your brain goes, how? That means that's a question mark. Right away, you know it's a question. Are you doing? In other words, I'm interested to hear, are you feeling well or not? Or are you doing okay? And you know that I'm trying to be gracious to understand how you're doing right now. But your brain puts all those words together, it forms a sentence and it has meaning, and your brain says, ah, the person just asked me, how am I doing? And you might say, I am doing fine. I'm not doing so fine. I am healthy. I have a cold, whatever it happens to be, you're responding. But how does that happen? That comes down to the word decoding. See, that's interpreting the meaning to words. So as I'm speaking to you right now, your brain is putting these sentences together, these words together into a sentence to create a meaning, and you're interpreting the meaning to the words or the symbols that I'm using right now to understand really what I'm saying. And you have so many words. Your brain is a powerful computer. It has stored many words. And for some of you, English is not a first language. English is a learned language. You have a different language. And your brain is so expansive. It's got the capacity for different languages. And that's incredible. Now, I only have one language. It is English. I admire students who have English as a learned language. I'm impressed that you are willing to cross a culture to learn another language. And in the process, this dynamic is taking place. Words in, encoding, understanding of words being used is decoding. So I understand the word car, and somebody uses the word car. So in my mind, I've got the word, but I'm not using it right now. But somebody says, I have a brand new car. And the listener says car, new. And I create an image of a brand new car, shiny, gleamy, etc. And so encoding in, decoding, deciphering, interpreting, understanding what is being said. And these two factors work together when you are a public speaker because you are using words, you are speaking them, and you need to understand your audience to understand what language they understand, what words they have and can understand, so that you use words that they are able to put together and understanding what you're saying. They can decode you. Is this important? Yes, it is. That's why understanding your audience is so critical. Understanding what they know, and how they speak and what words they use so that you can use words familiar to them. One-way communication. You've seen this before. You have the sender and you have a receiver. And the sender is speaking, is public speaking, and they have a message. How do they give the message? One major part, not the only, language. They also have nonverbal communication, and they also have tone of voice. And those all create the message. But language is central and critical to what is being said. And there's a channel. It might be live. It might be on Zoom. It might be on the telephone. There are many, many ways and settings where this can take place. And you have the receiver who takes in the message and decodes, listening to the words and decodes understanding to a message. You have transactional communication, two-way communication. And this involves, again, a sender who's speaking to a receiver. But in this case, the receiver answers back. So the receiver becomes the sender, and the original sender becomes a receiver, and you get this sort of thing taking place right here. This original sender has a message, uses language, a channel, and the receiver takes in the message. And then the original receiver responds. It's a conversation. They send a message using language, words, through whatever channel is being used back to the original sender, who is now a receiver. So in being with your friends and you're having a conversation, you become both a sender and a receiver. You have a message and they have a message. You use words, they use words. You use a channel, they're using a channel. This all is in part of communication. Now, in both the one-way and the two-way communication, there's always environment. It could be a friendly, warm, hostile, neutral sort of environment. There are many, many factors that come into the issue of environment. And then, as I've already talked about, the encoding and decoding, that's always going on. As I'm speaking, your brain, which has encoded words, are now decoding my words to put meaning, to put understanding to what's being said. And the whole time, we all realize that there's all sorts of noise. Like one of your noise, some of you come from a different time zone. Maybe you're tired. So that's noise. Other noise can happen in the background. There are all sorts of noise factors that come into play here. So noise becomes a factor that impacts the capacity to be able to listen. And you're going to experience, when you're a communicator, all sorts of noise, white noise. Like in this room, you can't hear it. I can hear the ticking of the clock. That's white noise. That's just background noise. I can hear something else humming very softly. But then on occasion, cars go by outside. I have the windows closed. Sometimes they make noise. When you're speaking, somebody coughing, somebody talking to somebody, it all creates a disturbance. It creates noise. All these dynamics are taking place the whole time you're in communication. Now, words have a primary meaning and can have a secondary meaning. And we just need to be aware of the fact that that goes on, okay? So the first is called denotative meaning, words. It's the explicit meaning of a word. That's what it's all about. It's explicit meaning of a word. It can be the primary, it's the primary meaning. It's the specific meaning of a word that we understand immediately. Now, there's a potential secondary meaning to its literal meaning. In other words, we can put a different additional meaning to a word. And it can have a very different meaning when we do that. So, for instance, years ago, now this is in North America, that this happened. I have a sister-in-law. Her nickname is Sam. Her real name is Sherry, but she gets called Sam. And Sam and my brother moved to Southern California from Calgary, Alberta, here in Canada. And they were at a party with a bunch of young adults. They're all friends. And so my brother and sister-in-law had just moved to Southern California. Different culture. Yes, still all used English. But my sister, they played a joke on my sister-in-law. They technically embarrassed her. It was for fun. And what she said, what she was meaning to say was this: I am embarrassed. Oh, I feel so embarrassed. But she didn't use the word embarrassed. She used another word that meant embarrassed from Calgary, but in Southern California, it had a radically different meaning. You see, what she said is, oh, I feel so queer. Queer. And in Alberta at that time, in the 1970s, this is literally what she was meaning. Oh, I feel so embarrassed. I feel so queer, meaning I feel embarrassed. But all the Californians, that word had a different meaning at that time, a secondary meaning to it. And here's what they heard her say. Oh, I feel so homosexual. So she was saying, oh, I feel so embarrassed. I feel so queer. But what they were hearing was, oh, I feel so homosexual. I feel so queer. So the denotative meaning, the original meaning meant strange, embarrassed, but the secondary meaning, which was in a different culture, now had become known as homosexual. And so when we're speaking to an audience, we have to think about the words we use because they can have different meanings. That's why audience analysis is absolutely critical to communication. What do words mean in a different culture that still uses your same language, but they put new meanings to it? And in North America, that takes place quite often. Okay, now I want to talk about problems with language. Problems with language. And there are really kind of 4 areas I just want to talk about real briefly. So we need to be aware of these. One is the issue of abstraction. It's a general concepts or specific details. So let's look at that. The sky, the air you breathe, trees. Now those are more abstraction. The sky and the air are especially abstractions. Trees, because there's many types of trees that we need to consider. So when a person says, and it says sky, it's an abstraction. It's not really something, you do not know these things directly. Okay, you don't know them directly. You can touch, hear, smell, or taste them. For instance, the air. When I wave my hand in front of me, I can feel the movement of the air, and it's a cooling effect on my face. So I have the ability to actually feel the air. I can't see the air. I know it's here. I'm looking out a window right now, and it's kind of white clouds. No, it's not raining or anything. It's just a moderate sort of day. I cannot see the sky. I can see the clouds. I can see some blue sky. We say that, but really, I can't see the air itself. I can see the effects of the air. When the wind blows, I can see the effects of the air moving, but I can't see the air itself. That's an abstraction. And we don't know these things directly. Like I can see my computer in front of me. I'm looking at my computer. I can see that. It's not an abstraction. However, the air is an abstraction. And so we need to realize that in language, we have this thing called abstractions. And so we need to be aware that these abstractions can have impact on us. Yet we, with all these abstractions around us, we create words to describe them so that we have meaning to the abstraction. Sky, you can't see it, but you can feel it. Same with the air, you can breathe it. You can touch, hear, or smell, or taste different things, but that doesn't always mean you can see them. So we create words to describe them. Air is a great abstraction. And we need to realize that when we're using words, there are concepts and ideas that are abstractions, and we have to somehow use words that give meaning to those abstractions so people understand us. When I say it's a windy day, if you know anything about weather, you know that means that there's a wind and it's blowing. Yeah, that's an abstraction because you can't actually see the wind, but you can feel the wind. You can see the effects of the wind on the trees as I can outside. There's no real wind right now. It's quite calm. And so that's a problem with language is the issue of abstraction. So we have to always think about abstractions because they do impact us. Another is definition. It's the boundaries of some named things. See, we create categories so that we can understand meanings. For instance, if I were to say to you today, I was out walking and I saw an animal. Well, animal is a very broad definition. And we need to create a category of that definition to have meaning. So when you say, well, what type of animal did you see? And I say, I saw a horse. Now that gives more definition. Animal, thousands of types of animals in the world. Horse, that changes things because it's more narrow. And you say, well, what type of horse? I might say a quarter horse or a thoroughbred or a palomino or a pinto. And all of a sudden, as I use each of those words, it narrows down. Okay, the horse you saw was a quarter horse. That's a certain type of horse that in North America, cowboys used when they were bringing in the cattle into the stalls for milking or whatever. So to say I saw an animal, that's broad. I saw a horse, narrows it. I saw a quarter horse, more narrows it. I saw a quarter horse baby horse. That makes it even more narrow. And so by definition, we deal with definitions in language. And the more we get it narrowed down, the more people can understand. The problem is that we assume others share the same definition. See, I say I saw an animal, you all think, oh, okay, that means he saw a dog. And we assume that you understood my definition. Not true. That's why I've got to narrow it down so people have an understanding. So if you're going to talk on being a person who loves animals, that's great, but you better give us some clear definitions. What are you meaning by love animals? Generically only, or are you talking specifically? Like what type of animals do you most enjoy? And so people don't carry the same definition as we do. Just checking something here. I don't know what happened here. Just give me a second here. Oh, okay, there we are. There. The next is polarization. It is thinking of the world in two values of opposites. Okay, now we got a problem with that. It's good, but here's a good example, hot and cold. Okay, those are two extremes, hot and cold. People can give a sense of understanding through experience what hot and cold weather is like, hot and cold water is like, or those sort of life experiences. However, the problem with polarization is that it's thinking of extremes on either side. The fact is, there are levels or stages between the opposites. There are stages between hot and cold. And so what words will we use? Was it a hot day or a cold day? Well, what if it was something else? Not all issues is a matter of extremes. For instance, hot, warm, tepid, cool, cold. There are degrees of hot or warm, degrees of cold or cool. Tepid's more in the middle. And so we find words that give us more clarity to really what we're saying. So polarization can be a problem. And, we can say a person was livid, angry, and another person was calm, delightful. But can there be something in between? Yes. The person may have just been friendly, neither angry nor ultra caring, but could be just a friendly person. There are levels or stages between the opposites. Not all issues of life is a matter of extremes. Hot, warm, tepid, cool, cold are just examples. An example, you're either for or against abortion. Those are extremes. And to a greater degree, many people are either or. I understand that because I'm in basic disagreement with abortion. I believe that an unborn baby is a child, a human being. But what do you do? What do you do when a woman who is pregnant is told by the doctor, you have cancer? For us to treat the cancer means that the baby will die. The baby cannot withstand radiation, cannot withstand um, other treatments that will be given. You see, you've got some choices now. You're forced into a moral dilemma. You could say, I believe that there's an issue of priority. Do we prioritize the child unborn or the mother? Because one of the two are going to die if something doesn't happen. That's a moral dilemma. It's easy to sit and say where you stand about regarding abortion or not abortion, but what do you do when you're actually dealing with people's lives, an unborn child's life and the life of a mother? We had that experience. A bunch of us got together as adults, probably about 60 or so of us were in a class together, sessions together on Sundays, and we had to deal with this. And this couple who was a part of it had one, I think a 2 going on 3-year-old child already, and she got pregnant again. And later the doctors said, you have cancer. If we treat you for the cancer, we can beat the cancer. We can stop it. We're early enough. We detected it. But what we have to do is such that it will take the life of the unborn child. That's a dilemma. It's not an easy thing. You're between a rock and a hard place in the decision making. Do you say we're going to not take the child's life and trust that it'll work out and that she'll live, the mother? Or do we say, no, let's end the child's life by taking the processing of trying to fight the cancer? And the couple decided that they would not take any thing to harm the child. Child was born. The mother died within, I think, about 2 weeks after the child was born because of cancer. So it's not so easy dealing with these two opposites in any way. Allness is another major issue. To be all inclusive, You know, all inclusive would be about, here's an example. Women includes every woman who are either living or who have passed away in the world, but not boys, girls, or men, and nothing else. That's an allness sort of statement. There can be problems with the issue of allness. We create generalities that at times misrepresent the actual reality. Okay, so generalities can be a problem with words. We must be careful how we use that. All men are this, all women are this. Is that always the case? Here's an example. All professors are weird. Well, I've met some weird professors. I admit that when I went to school. And you might even think I'm weird. But not all professors are weird. By definition, they are not. And that's a generality that we can make. Today, in certain parts of our world, police are no longer being trusted because of terrible things that have happened. Do you know, do all police do what some bad police do? No. And so using a generality creates the image that all people who are this type are like this, and that's simply not the case. And so we need to really be careful how we use the word or the concept of allness in our language and presentation. Now, language really does help to shape our attitudes. Here are some areas that this goes on. Naming people. Whether it's naming a child being born, or whether it's being a bully and naming somebody by saying you are stupid. That's naming somebody. And that's a terrible thing to say, because words do count, words do meaning, and words can hurt, and words can build up. And we need to be very careful. I have a book somewhere, I don't even know where it is anymore. And it's entitled Your One Word. Your One Word. And the author argues that everybody has a word, every business organization has a word that when you boil everything down, this is the word that really captures them. And so I was talking to Joanne about that, my wife, and I said to her, you know what one word that captures you for me? And she said, what? And I said, steady. She's steady. She's the Rock of Gibraltar. She's steady, calm, collective. And she said, yeah, I think that probably is the right word. I mean, there are other words that describe her, absolutely. And I said, well, what word describes me? Oh, she said, that's simple. You're enthusiastic. Your enthusiasm always at work. I approach things that way. And I thought, you know what? I think that's right. So language shapes us. And when we use words and calling to people in speeches, calling people to rise above, when we use words of condemnation, it negatively impacts. When we use words that raise people, their shoulders up, it changes them. Credibility. Language shapes attitudes. Credibility is gained or lost based on this issue of credibility. I told you from the beginning, to me, this is the most critical word and idea in public speaking, the issue of credibility. It is the perception an audience has of you as a speaker. And how language is used in the mind of the listener of you determines whether they're going to continue to listen to you. Your attitude towards them in your mind determines how serious you'll take what you're going to be saying to them. Language shapes our attitudes. We all have attitudes. Okay. Status. Language shapes our attitudes about status. The single most powerful title a person can have that impacts an audience's willingness to listen to you is the word doctor. That may not be that should not always be right, but that is a fact that people who have a doctorate degree and are called doctor whatever have high status, and it shapes their attitude. So language, that the title, the status shapes mother, father, uncle, boss, owner. All those are status symbols that shape you and I. My grandchildren, I have 3 grandchildren from my oldest daughter and son-in-law. My oldest granddaughter is 10, My only granddaughter is 10. My oldest grandson is 8. My youngest grandson is 6. And they all use the same title speaking of my wife when they speak to her. They say, mum. That's a status. It's a revered status in our home. And language shapes attitudes related to sexism and racism. Our attitudes of the opposite gender, our attitudes of people of different cultural backgrounds. See, my position is all of us, male and female, child, a teenager, adult, no matter what culture, no matter what our race, we're all created in the image of God. Therefore, there is no person regarding sexual background, I'm talking about gender background, regarding background of race, where they come from, what part of the world, the color of skin, none of that is incorporated as significant, but rather the fact is that we are human beings and we are to be valued. Those sort of things shape attitudes. Differences in communications related to males and females. Here's just a couple of things. I'm going to go through this really quick here because our time's gone. Females. Now here's some more studies that have been shown that there is a difference between males and females. It doesn't mean all males are like females are like this and all males are like the other. It means generically speaking, the tendency is that more females spend more time talking about these sorts of things here. Personal domestic subjects, relationship problems, family, health and reproductive matters, weight, food and clothing, men and other women, gossip about close friends. The women tend to spend in their communication arenas a great deal of time using words that describes or discusses these 6 areas, broad areas. Men are more likely to be involved in these areas here in their discussion. Music, current events, sports, business, other men. And by the way, this one, gossip about sports figures and media personalities. I was reading an article, please don't ask me where I read it, it's a long time ago. The fact is that men gossip more than women do. And yet we've often kind of suggested that probably the other way is the case, but that is not in fact the case. Now, there are a few areas where males and females were pretty equal talking about these different areas, and there's 3 of them: personal appearance, sex, dating, etc., related to the opposite gender. They tend to use much the same sets of words in those discussions. Last thought here, a cross-cultural reality between females and males. Females use language more for words more for connection and intimacy. Now, I have here, I was watching a talk yesterday by this person, and she did an excellent job in talking about this. It was on things women secretly want to experience from men. And there's different, she had 13 of them. And it's interesting how many of these connect to the issue of connection and intimacy. The man saying, I got this. The man's going to take care of something. The man who opens the door for a woman. A man who says, I'll fix it, which I'm not good at fixing anything. A man who cooks, and I'm pretty limited on that. A man who gives a woman compliments, genuine, serious compliments. A man who gives a jacket to the woman his jacket to the woman when it's cold out. A man who kisses the forehead of a woman. A man who gives unexpected gifts. A man saying, I love you before the woman says it to him. A man who dresses and grooms properly. A man who knows how to say no when it's need to say no. A man who actually flirts a little bit. Those are languages that connect well with the woman. Now, the man uses language more for status and independence than the woman does. The females tend to be much more secure than males do. In fact, as I was reading some research some time ago that shows that women are so much more secure within themselves than men, generically speaking, that if you were to shipwreck a man on an island and shipwreck a woman on another island, that the woman would more likely survive than the man, because she has built in her this connection of well-being more than the man does. Very interesting. Therefore, they tend to speak a different dialect, or some say different genderlect. The point being that dialect is the issue of language, but we use language differently for males and for females. Even though we use the same word, sometimes they have different meanings. And you know what all this means? As a public speaker, you need to understand the power and the significance and the importance of language, because it is so critical to communicating as a public speaker. Now it's 1:15. I have to let you go. I'm going to be sending you a link. It's a YouTube link. It's a speech of about 8 minutes in length. Watch it. That's all you have to do. But when you're watching it, just think about the theory of public speaking, and then I will be giving you a critique. I'm not going to be asking for dialogue. I'm not going to say to you, hey, what did you think? We did that once before. This time you're just going to listen to the prof who listens to a speech. You're going to see the same speech, and then I'm going to talk to you about the speech. Okay, we're done for today. I'll be getting those evaluations back to you. Thank you for your concern for my wife. I'll get those evaluations back to you. We'll have this sent to you, this little speech that you're to watch. Then I'm going to talk about it on Wednesday. Have a good day. Take care. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, when you said bye, someone left. Nice timing.
We'll pray for your wife.
What time?
Professor, could you explain